Welcome to this week's Wellness Wednesday. And this week we have the first in a 3-part video series with Julia Alderman, who is one of the nutrition team here at the Optimum Health Clinic. And in this 3-part series, we're going to be exploring the role of supplements. In this first video, we're going to be exploring why do we even need supplements? Is surely diet alone should be enough? So we'll talk to that and why supplements can be important in fatigue recovery. We'll then in the later videos get into things like why source of supplements can be so important, how to work with supplement sensitivities. If you saw Liana's episode yesterday on Therapeutic Tuesdays, you'll have heard about how she was talking about for the first time in 19 years, she's been able to tolerate supplements by working with our approach here at the Optimum Health Clinic. We'll talk a bit about that in some of these subsequent videos in this 3-part series as well. So here is Julia Alderman. So welcome, Julia. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hi.
So I think one of the things that people can often think is, well, why do we need supplements? Surely eating a good diet alone should give us enough of those raw ingredients. So what would you say to someone that's thinking that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think, in an ideal world that would be the case. And obviously we always address diet first, as that's the foundation to health. But we also know that actually many people don't meet the recommended daily requirements for what they should be having. And in fact, the Public Health England, they do a national diet and nutrition survey. And in that, it shows that only about a third of adults reach the recommended 5 a day. And in addition, there's many deficiencies. So for example, iron deficiency, vitamin D, folate, they're all very common. And in clinic, we know that deficiencies are common as well. So we often test people for various nutrients, but ones that we typically see low in CFS, things like magnesium, zinc, vitamin B6, B2, etc.
And I think it's important to make the point that those studies are on the general population. So when we start looking at the kind of chronically ill population, then often we're seeing significantly bigger issues, let's say, in this area.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, if you're looking at diet on how to be healthy, that's one thing. If you're looking at diet therapeutically, that's another. And likewise, that's really where supplements can have really quite a profound impact on correcting deficiencies and correcting the physiology of the system that has come so imbalanced over such a long time.
Because sometimes we're using a lot more in therapeutic doses, we're using a lot more than just getting in kind of minimum kind of recommended daily allowances, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And it's worth saying a bit as well around the difference in nutritional needs of different people, because I think people can also think, well, surely everyone should just be vegan, or everyone should just be paleo, or that everyone is the same in terms of their physiological needs. Yeah.
And again, if we talk about the diet being enough and whether we can get enough from what we eat, what should we eat is another question. And there is no one diet that's right for us all, like you say. And at different stages of our life, we'll all have different nutrient requirements. So, for example, if we're under more stress, if you've had an operation or an infection, depending what environmental exposures you might have, and also genetics. We actually know that some people have a higher genetic requirement for certain nutrients. So a condition, for example, pyroluria, where people have a higher requirement for zinc and B6. So there's certainly not one size fits all on supplements and our needs, because those needs change considerably across the course of our life and across events and exposures that occur.
And I think it's also worth saying that this is not just, oh, take this and, it's a whole other thing when you give the example of pyroluria, that if someone has spent their whole life deficient in zinc and B6 and then suddenly they start supplementing that, it can be an enormous impact on how that person feels, particularly in that example, if somebody has spent their whole life with anxiety and their whole life with their system just feeling on edge, and then suddenly they supplement, and it can be sometimes quite dramatic that the whole system just kind of calms down and resets itself because it spent its whole life kind of compensating for a deficiency.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there are times where supplements do have that really noticeable quick effect where someone has been so deficient for such a long time, and that has caused a whole range of symptoms or been a big contributing factor, that when those deficiencies are met, the impact is really considerable.
Yeah, and just to manage expectations, it's not always like that. But I think it's a helpful way of thinking about when people are like, well, surely food is enough, and then you see the impact when those kind of deficiencies get addressed. Should we also...
and just to say there, I mean, like you say, everyone is very different. So for a lot of people, it might not be that obvious that quickly, and it will be more of a gradual improvement over time. So as a number of deficiencies improve, that's when the person will then feel the effect. So it can be more of an accumulative effect instead.
Yeah, and sometimes there can be a sequencing element there as well, right? That you need to balance this before you can, and then other things may balance themselves as a result of something that's been out of balance being put back into balance.
Absolutely, yeah.
Should we touch a little bit then as well on kind of modern farming and the impact upon soil as well? Because there's a big difference between eating certain foods now than there was 50, 100 years ago. And indeed, people may also have experienced that going to different countries where, particularly, in the UK, things like tomatoes and carrots, often when they come out the supermarket, have almost no flavor. And then you eat in other countries or you eat from kind of homegrown, and it's a whole different experience.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
About that element as well.
Yeah, I think, like you say, modern farming techniques have really depleted soils, and as a result, because the nutrients aren't in the soils, it's not getting into the food. So concentrations of nutrients in food has reduced, which in turn increases our requirement for supplementation. And like you say, if food is also being flown across the world and farmed in very, very different ways, that has a big impact on nutrient status of the food, and that is also evident in how it tastes.
It's and also, of course, the less taste there is in food, the more likely we are to eat more of it. The food that has real flavor tends to be more satisfying, I guess, both from a taste point of view, and our body's got the nutrients, so we're not still craving food. Yeah,
for sure.
Which I guess also leads on to the issue of absorption, that you can give 10 people exactly the same meal, but they're not necessarily going to get the same output from that.
Yeah, and I think absorption is a huge issue, both with what we eat and the supplements we take, making sure that whatever we put into our system is actually being fully absorbed so that we get the benefits. So rather than kind of good health just starting with what we eat, it's really about what we eat and what we absorb. And we know that so many people, particularly our client group, have lots of digestive imbalances. Whether that's constipation, diarrhea, bloating, wind, all very much indicative that there are imbalances going on there. So absorption may be impaired or significantly reduced.
And of course, addressing that may also, the irony may also require supplements to start to deal with some of those issues around the gut lining or SIBO issues or whatever else may be going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the next video, which I guess will come out in a week or so after this, we'll then get kind of the next step we'll come to then is looking at, do do we absorb nutrients from supplements? And we'll also get into are they safe and some of the pieces around that. But for now, Julia, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Hope you enjoyed this week's Wellness Wednesday. Remember, this is a 3-part series. So although there's going to be a week's break of episodes next week, the subsequent week we'll have the part 2, then the week after the part 3. If you'd like to find out more about working with one of our teams, such as Julia here at the Optimum Health Clinic, do order a free information pack from the optimumhealthclinic.com. You can also request a free 15-minute chat with Julia or one of the team. Tomorrow it's Thoughtful Thursday here on Everyday Alex, and I'm going to be talking about the power of consistency. My idea of this video came from the fact we just broke this week 100 episodes here on Everyday Alex, and I realized that one of the qualities that I learned to develop on my healing path was to be consistent and to be able to follow through with things. So I thought that would be a helpful theme with which to talk to. So I look forward to talking with you then.